Well, it probably doesn't go too far. We both everything down around here just in case.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, you got it?
Let me stage or something so I.
Okay.
That work?
Good?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, Council members. Barbara Spudauer, Director of CCA Development for Western Riverside Council of Governments. Here to provide you on Community Choice Aggregation Program summary overview that we've been putting together. I've met with each of you and have given, I think, 2 presentations. So we're giving an update, answer any additional questions you may have, and hopefully the city will decide to join Western Community Energy. So just a brief way of background, what is community choice aggregation? Under AB 117, what it does is it allows a jurisdiction either on its own or it can come together under a joint powers agreement to purchase energy for its constituents. This is an opt-out program specifically designed to give CCAs the opportunity to make it in the energy world instead of being an opt-in program. So what that means is if the city joins, it's joining on behalf of its residents and businesses, so they're automatically in. If they want to stay with Edison, which they have that ability to, they need to opt out. There's plenty of opportunities along the way before launch, after launch, and well into the program to where residents and businesses can always opt out and go back to Edison. So why are jurisdictions looking at doing CCAs? Ultimately, it creates a local control over your program design, rate setting, power supply, what you want your energy mix to look like. It provides customer with choices. Right now, their only choice is Edison. It provides competitive and lower, in some cases, lower energy costs to the consumer. And it does create a favorable economic development aspect in the fact that you can design rates to attract businesses into your region. The nice thing is, again, going back to setting the rates, they're set at the local level, so under a JPA format, they're set at the board. The public can come provide comments, whereas in today's setting, residents would need to go to the CPUC. So it does give the community the opportunity to voice themselves. It's not a new concept. This has been really happening more along the lines up in Northern California, Marin being the oldest. They're nearing 9-10 years. Sonoma County following after that. In our region, the city of Lancaster has been operating for approximately 4 years. They've been successful in providing lower rates. City of San Jacinto in our region, your neighbor, is getting ready to launch in the next couple months. Out in the desert in the Coachella Valley, we have 3 cities that are getting ready to launch in the early summer. Pico Rivera just recently launched, as well as the town of Apple Valley launched in October of last year. And Riverside County Unincorporated is doing a program for its unincorporated residents, and they're expected to launch sometime in 2018 as well. And then we have a whole host of other areas up and down the state that continue to look at forming a CCA. So how is the current process of getting electricity to you, the consumer? Currently, Edison purchases. They go out onto the markets. They purchase energy. They also have generation facilities, so they purchase energy from themselves, and then they deliver the energy through their lines and distribution center, which they own, to the customer. In the CCA format, the CCA does the purchasing of the energy. It's out in the same markets that Edison is from. It can even buy energy from Edison's generation facilities. Edison still provides the distribution piece because they own those assets. Customers continue to pay for those assets, and the energy is delivered to the customer. We did a feasibility study late last year. It was completed. What we did was we partnered with Coachella Valley as well as San Bernardino and looked at doing a 2-county wide, separate counties, 3 different geographical areas. We looked at the energy usage, the load analysis, various governance structures, operational structures, economic impacts, So we've put a lot of time and energy into developing this program. We do get asked a normal thing about what are exit fees or the power charge and difference adjustment. And what this is there is a fee because Edison is currently under contract for energy that is already procured for its residents. When a CCA departs, Edison still has those contracts. So under law, Edison needs to remain whole to pay for those contracts, and what it's called is an exit fee. And that is charged to a CCA customer. We have calculated this into our feasibility study, and it still shows that we are feasible to provide a savings to the customer even with this fee attached on top. So does CCA save money for customers? We're seeing up and down the state, PG&E actually has higher rates than Edison, so they see a bigger savings than what Edison consumers do see, like in the city of Lancaster, or what the city of San Jacinto is estimating that it'll roll out, as well as the city of Rancho Mirage. But what we've seen on the municipal side for municipal facilities like the city of San Rafael, they actually did have a $47,000 savings on their municipal facilities. So there is a savings, especially for large energy customers, because they're the ones that see the more savings. So commercial customers, municipal customers tend to see a larger savings. Governance structures that we looked at, again, we looked at 2 county scenarios, 1 county scenario, individual COG regions, then even individual jurisdictions. Our executive committee decided that it would be best if we created a separate JPA outside of WRCOG, however, utilizing WRCOG staff and resources so that we can implement in a more efficient manner. We have gotten questions regarding franchise fees and how they impact the cities. Again, Edison charges, they have a monthly transmission or distribution charge, and then it's also part of the generation charge is what makes up your franchise fee. Under state law, SB 278 specifically states that when a CCA is formed, the generation piece remains calculated at the IOU's generation rate. So what that means is your franchise fees remain the same. The idea is that when a CCA comes online, that the city is held harmless in terms of the franchise fees that it receives. We've always been asked about the potential savings. What we've done is we've created a model that looks at about 6 jurisdictions or 147,000 residential units, or about 19,000 commercial units. That comes up to about 2.2 million megawatt hours. If we did a 2% savings, it's about 2.4 million for the residential and about 3% on the commercial side. Now, if we drill that down to Hemet, you have approximately 29,000 residential units and actually about 3,500 commercial units. So if you take that at a 2% savings, your residents could see approximately $500,000 savings in the commercial side as well, about $550,000. And then it's doubled with a 4% savings. Another question we get asked is, the savings seem so small on the individual basis. Is it really worth the time and effort to put in to doing this? And our response is yes. Because if you look at a 2% savings over a 10-year period of time, you're talking $24 million on the residential side, $30 million on the commercial side. So you're looking at over $54 million in potential savings over a 10-year period for really your residents not having to put any, or businesses put any effort into getting a savings. So you're not asking them to change out anything or change their habits or add, additional energy supplies to their buildings. We get asked about the Edison bill. What does it look like? You still receive your bill from Edison. That's one of the charges that's under the delivery charges that Edison charges. What it does, it breaks it out just like it does now on your bill. You have your cover bill that shows what you pay. Your back pages break out what the generation is just like it does now. Instead of it saying Edison's generation, it would say WCE's generation. This is just a sample from what they did as a mock-up for the city of Lancaster. So how does it work? Must everyone participate? Like I said at the beginning, this is an opt-out program, so if the city decides to join, which we really hope it does, you would be having all of your residents and businesses join. However, businesses and residents can opt out, and they can opt out anytime. By law, we're required to notify customers 2 times prior to launch and then 2 times after launch. We've met with several of the CCAs that highly advise us to increase this to 3 and 4 times. Make sure that we're out into the public so that consumers know this option's available, so that they can easily opt out. We are in the process of finalizing our website, where residents would be able to opt out from the website. They'd be able to call us, make it a real simple, easy process for them. We do have to compare rates every year. We need to sit down with Edison and see what their rates are for the coming year, or at least until their next rate increase, and against what the CCA's rates are. So this again gives you residents and businesses another opportunity that if they see the rates and if they're not seeing the savings they're hoping to see, they can again go back to Edison, again giving the consumer the choice of either being with the CCA or staying or going back to Edison. And it can go vice versa. If someone's with Edison and they want to come over to the CCA, they can do that as well. Once they do go back, at least for Edison's part, they do require that they stay for a minimum of a year before coming back if they want to switch. So there's no flip-flopping back and forth from 1 month to another. Additional CCA benefits. Edison has some really good programs out there, especially for their low income, their mobile home programs. However, Edison does cover 6 counties. Money is limited. Most of these programs are funded by the public goods charge that everyone pays. So by the time these programs sort of get down to us, there's not much left over. So it's limited in resources. What the CCA has is the ability to use any additional revenues is to enhance these programs or to even create new and innovative programs if it wants. A new innovative program, if you're into EV charging, Sonoma County is presently working with one of their car dealerships, providing additional rebates to where customers are actually able to purchase an electric vehicle and get a charger installed in their home for under $10,000. And Sonoma is able to keep control of the asset as far as the charging station and monitor it and help control the grid. So it's a real neat pilot program that they're trying out, but it's just one example of some things that a CCA could do. What are the risks? It sounds too good to be true. We all hear that. There are always risks, legislation being one, regulatory changes. I think at the end of last year we had legislation going through that was trying to hinder CCAs from forming. We have, the fluctuation of energy costs. They can increase, they can decrease. And we always run the opportunity that Edison could decrease its generation charges. So how do we really minimize those risks? Really being actively engaged at the state agencies with our legislators, letting them know, CCAs, the benefits, programs that are being implemented, doing our due diligence in contract management and oversight. We have retained the Energy Authority to manage the portfolio. They are owned and operated, or owned by 8 municipal utilities. So they have experience in the market, and they bring us the ability to purchase energy at cheaper rates. And again, as part of that, there will always be a rate stabilization fund in case there's a spike, that the CCA can weather the spike in energy costs. Startup costs, we've estimated our startup costs to be about $4 million. Currently, WRCOG's covering these costs using our agency funds. when WCE is up and running, if it doesn't want WRCOG to cover those costs, it can take out a loan if it wants. And all of the startup costs are recouped from the revenue, so it's built into the rates for the money that we've put forward in developing the program. How do cities join? City councils need to take action to join the JPA. We've created template JPA documents, bylaws, as well as the CCA ordinance, so the city would hold a public hearing for the CCA ordinance. Impacts the staff, really just to provide information at the counter, direct phone calls to us. If the city joins, me and my staff will be out in your community getting the word out. We have a marketing campaign ready to go. What happens next? Where we're at is once we get a couple cities to join, then we start engaging into the community and we start all of the paperwork with the PUC. So the PUC process with the utilities takes about 6 months. So if the city took action today, it does not automatically start tomorrow. What we are looking at in terms is if everything lines up and the stars are correct, we could potentially be operational in October of 2018 or November of 2018. While this misses our summer months, which is, not good, but it would give us the ability to launch in 2018. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Thank you for that presentation. How many cities do you need to form this JPA to get it started as a JPA?
2.
Just two.
Two to get us started.
Okay.
We're collectively, it would look good. We've run our calculations on about 5 to 6 jurisdictions.
And you answered my question on the low-income programs that Edison has. So that was my only question.
Okay.
I have a few. So do we know what it would cost to exit the program? Do we have a ballpark figure?
So if the city itself wanted to exit,
No,
or
if they're, well, either way, residents or city. But likely more the residents.
so if the residents exit and the energy hasn't been procured, there is no decrease.
Exit.
Right.
Okay.
There, as far as from the CCA.
Okay.
You always purchase energy and you have excess and they sell the excess. So if you had a number of residents, businesses, exit out after the program started and there was excess, then our portfolio manager, the Energy Authority, would then sell the energy.
Excess energy. Okay. So, is there a cost to re-enter the program if they have opted out for a year?
No.
Okay. What do you know what the savings has been realized in Lancaster on an average?
Their reports of what they've put out recently is between 3 and 4% savings.
So does the percentage of savings, is that dependent on the amount of energy that's bought from the grid?
The savings is calculated on the purchasing of the energy at the aggregate level and versus what Edison's rates would be. So your savings would be, here's what your Edison in business as usual, here's where you are, that delta is the savings.
So it isn't dependent on how much energy? I mean,
Not on how much energy, but the more energy that you use,
right, the more you save.
the more you save.
Okay, and with regards to outreach, because obviously something like this needs excessive outreach to the community to educate the community of the program. So Are those costs absorbed by WRCOG? Or is it solely dependent on the city? I know you have a marketing campaign, but how much of that is our responsibility?
If the city wants to help market, we're never going to tell you no, not help us. But as it stands today, there's no requirement for the city to invest into WRCOG is handling as part of our startup costs in the $4 million. And then once the CCA is operational, then it will have a marketing budget within its budget to provide additional outreach.
Okay, because we all know it's going to take a lot of outreach.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Yes, thank you for that presentation. I have a few questions. In the outset of your presentation, you mentioned something about you have more options by being a participant in the CCA, whereas outside of that, you only have one option, and that's Edison. What about solar?
So, good question. So your solar customers, they're net energy metering customers, or NEMs. In the Edison is, you're still utilizing Edison. So when your solar system goes offline, Edison is still providing the energy into your system.
Right.
What they do is when you have your yearly true-up for your NEMs, as we call them, so when the solar system goes online with Edison, 12 months later they do an annual true-up. And at that time, they tell you either you have generated more than you have needed, or you're in a deficit and you owe them money. If you have a well-designed system and you're not lighting your house up as a Christmas tree 24/7, 12 months a year, and you come out positive, Edison will send you a check, and it's normally sent on the wholesale amount. Under a CCA, the CCAs have been paying out actually at the market rate, which is a little bit higher. So the NEM customers actually work out a little better.
The CCA would essentially...
they would mimic the NEM.
Okay, same thing that Edison does. Because I have limited experience with that. I have solar panels at my house, and tremendous monthly savings, and I get a very minimal bill, usually like $10 more administrative from Edison, and we've had it a little over 3 years now, and we've had that true up and have received some rebates. So I was curious how that fit into the CCA concept. Are the exit fees any different between commercial or residential customers?
They are the same. They're calculated the same way. So the exit fees are calculated. There's a formula that's been designed by the California Public Utilities Commission, and it's about this long. And the utilities go in and they put their numbers in. They shoot out a number, and they submit it to the CPUC and say, here's the exit fee. And the PUC says, thanks. Here's the exit fee. So it's all calculated the same, but I can't guarantee you that it's $1.50 for you and $1.50 for commercial, but I can double check on that for you.
Okay. So if a city decides to become a participant in the CCA, is there a minimum number of customers within that city that would have to opt in to participate? Or theoretically, a city could say, yes, we'd like to be a member of the CCA, and turns out that nobody in the city wants to opt in, and they just maintain status quo. That's probably an extreme scenario, but what happens in a situation like that?
So if the city joins, everyone is automatically in. So residents and businesses are automatically in.
Okay.
So they have to opt out.
Have to opt out.
Now, if we got to a point, all of our models run us at a 25% opt-out rate to still show feasibility. What we have seen recently in the CCAs in Apple Valley, Lancaster, Pico Rivera, they actually show about a 4% opt-out rate because you do have customers who don't like the fact that they were opted in, that it's an opt-out program. They don't believe government should be, in the energy business, a whole host of other reasons of why they would opt out. So we have calculated that.
Okay, so based on, and you said Lancaster had been up and running about 3 years?
A little over 3 years.
Is that about the longest tenure so far?
In the Edison territory. In Marin, Marin's going on, I believe, 9 years, and then Sonoma is probably about 6 or 7.
Did you explore the opt-out percentage there too?
So their opt-out rates, Marin's actually is about 16%, and the reason theirs is because they are in the middle of doing a bunch of expansions into some various counties. So it's no longer just Marin County. I think they have 2 other counties involved. So their opt-out rate's a little higher. At Sonoma, they were running about 8.
Kind of similar to, I think, Bonnie's question on the marketing aspect. I mean, it would seem to me, I know councils are here to represent the interests of their community, and council makes a lot of decisions on their behalf. Something of this scope seems to me that input directly from the constituents would be helpful to know what their interest level is. Is that part of your marketing plan, or is that something that we would need to undertake as a city?
That's one of the reasons we've been coming out to the councils, is to get the word out, to get the public.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, it's probably been about a year that we've been thinking about this. I think it's just about a year. It isn't something that we, just arbitrarily decided to consider. This has been going on for a year that we've heard different presentations on, and okay, I'll defer to the mayor now.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. Along the lines of the solar with the net energy metering, is there a difference between somebody that has a lease and somebody that owns their system?
No.
Okay, so because on some leases, their energy costs, or their actually cost to lease that they're getting from the leasing company, is sometimes cheaper. Mm-hmm. So is there going to be, my question on the lease basically is, are some leasing companies offering cheaper rates than we would be able to get through the CCA?
Your lease would stay the same. Again, this is just the purchasing of the energy.
Okay.
And then at the end, if you are a NEM customer and you have an excess, it gets paid out at a higher rate than what the IOU currently
Do you
pays
know
out.
what the percentage higher?
It's about a penny kilowatt hour.
Okay.
So it's not much, but it is a little bit more.
Okay. And then on commercial, so with Edison on a commercial, they're charged, their energy charges are based on peak demand, and that peak demand is over a 15-minute period, and it's whatever that peak is over 15 minutes, that's what they're charged, the rate they're charged over the entire month. Is that how this is going to work through the CCA the same way?
So your distribution side will remain the same. So Edison's process for time of use that they outline on their distribution side will always stay the same. On the generation side, your generation cost is the same regardless if you are purchasing energy at 5 o'clock than what you're purchasing at 10 o'clock. So the generation piece is the same across the board. The difference is that on the delivery side really is where you see the differences in your bills.
So commercial is still going to get the demand charge from
They would still have on the delivery side the demand charges.
is this under the aegis of Western Community Energy? I mean, is there an entity that operates this program?
So Western Community Energy is the new JPA that we are in the process of setting up. So as soon as I get 2 jurisdictions to formally join, that WCE will enter into a management contract with WRCOG to provide the administrative and resources for implementation. We're almost there.
How many cities have joined in so far?
So we have the city of Murrieta is taking action the beginning of April, and we've been doing all of our council presentations, and the city of Beaumont has given direction for staff to bring us back for action, so we are following up with them as well.
JPA itself, a nonprofit?
Yes.
The potential savings goes to the users, right? I mean, that's what it says. The potential savings goes to the users. Are there other sources of revenue that go elsewhere? For example, it talks about that the West Riverside COG has the option of paying for startup costs, and then in turn will be reimbursed from the revenue. So that indicates to me there is a revenue flow. Where else does it go? It's in addition to the consumer savings.
Sure.
Okay.
Certainly. So so yes, there are revenues. The CCA, it is, you are in the energy business, so there are revenues. The 2% savings is calculated on revenues coming in, putting in 7% into a reserve, and then paying out your expenses. And then there's actually, what our performers show is there is actually excess revenue that's available that the board would be able to either decide if it wants to put that back into more savings to the customer, or if it wants to put more into revenues, or if it wants to do additional programs. That is at the board's discretion. And the board is set up to have 1 elected official per member jurisdiction, and the alternate as well needs to be an elected official. So that is ultimately a board decision. So when the revenues are coming in and the budget's run and you have your reserve set aside and whatever additional revenues you're anticipating, you can either put that back and give potentially higher savings to your customer. You can do programs. Really, that's at the board's discretion.
So would the city have to be a member of the JPA in order to participate in the way you just described?
Yes.
That's it.
I just had to chuckle inwardly when I heard the comment about the more energy you use, the more you save. Sounds like my wife's rationale when she goes shopping.
But it was on sale.
I couldn't have saved that much if I hadn't spent that much.
Mayor, I have a question, if you don't mind. When I reviewed the JPA document some time ago now, I know that there's an exit strategy for cities who want to opt themselves out down the road. Do we know at this point how the JPA is going to be purchasing power? Are those going to be long-term power purchasing contracts, which would then require an opting out city to pay their way out if they wanted to opt out?
There will be a mixture of contracts, so you'll have short-term, medium, and long-term. In SB 350 outlines that 65% of the energy contracts being purchased have to be 10 years or more. So there could be that scenario if the city got, 6-7 years in and it decided it wanted to pull out. What the Energy Authority, who manages the portfolio, would do is it's best to minimize that liability as far as selling the energy that's already been procured for the city. There's also the ability to give notice not to purchase any more energy for the city and letting those contracts run out. And then there would be no liability at the end of that piece.
So you'd either have to stay in until the contract ran out, or try to sell it, or pay out if you were.
There is always that. But what we've seen is more cities joining versus we haven't seen any dropout of Marin or Sonoma.
I know that the county of LA has been, or the cities in the county of LA have been trying to form this, and they've come to kind of a loggerheads with SCE. Is that going to affect this at all? I know that they delayed their implementation into 2020.
Well, so County of Los Angeles unincorporated municipal facilities did launch 2 months ago, their CCA. They are anticipating rolling out the county unincorporated along with the 2 cities. I believe it's Rolling Hills Estates and one more there. They actually do plan on rolling those out shortly. I know they have some board discussions to look at 2019 versus 2020. I think it's more towards 2019. I just got off the phone with them. I can only speak limitedly to the Edison because we as a group alongside Coachella Valley are in negotiations with LA County with Edison. So,
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
With that, my one concern is if for long term, for an opt-out, that it doesn't end up something like CalPERS, where it gets so expensive and then to opt out is even more expensive. So that's my concern with this, but anytime we can save our constituents money is a good day, so. Are there any questions from all of you out there waiting to rush the microphone? Any comments? None? All right. Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Certainly.
Appreciate that. Right, up next, we've got closed session, so we are going to recess to closed session. We're going okay, before I recess, is there any comments from the public about any of the closed session items?